What if I told you that one of the brightest minds in America also became one of its deadliest killers? For 17 years, a man living alone in a tiny wooden shack built bombs by hand and sent them across the country. His attacks killed, injured, and terrified people, while the FBI, despite their best efforts, couldn't catch him. The press called him the Unabomber. 17 years, 16 bombs, 3 dead, 23 injured, and the most shocking part, this so-called monster was once a gifted math genius, someone who could have built an entirely different kind of future. It was 1996 in Lincoln, Montana. Deep in the wilderness stood a cabin barely bigger than a single room. No electricity, no plumbing, just a bed, a wood stove, shelves crammed with books, jars of chemicals, and piles of metal scraps. This was where Theodore John Kaczynski, known to the world as the Unabombers, spent years plotting his war against modern society. From this cabin, he built bombs that killed professors, airline passengers, and shop owners. For nearly 2 decades, Americans lived in fear. They checked their mailboxes with caution. They hesitated before boarding planes. And yet, the FBI still couldn't catch him. But who was Ted Kaczynski, really? How did a quiet boy once celebrated as a prodigy become one of the most feared killers in modern history? To understand, we need to go back to Chicago, where his story began. Ted was born in 1942 to a Polish American family living in the suburbs of Chicago. His parents weren't wealthy, but they valued education, ideas, and the outdoors. From the start, Ted was different. With an IQ of 168, he was considered a genius. He skipped grades, breezed through school, and earned praise from teachers. At home, he loved music, reading, and camping trips with his family. He wasn't seen as dangerous or violent. In fact, many remembered him as a thoughtful and respectful child. But his intelligence also set him apart. He was quiet, shy, and far more comfortable with books than with people. That distance would grow as he got older. By the time he was 16, Ted was accepted into Harvard University. He was the youngest in his class, but the experience was far from inspiring. Surrounded by wealth and privilege, he stood out as the poor kid in shabby clothes. His classmates mocked him. Professors often brushed him aside. For the first time, Ted realized he wasn't the smartest person in every room, and it hurt. Became withdrawn. Classmates described him as moody, rude, and nearly silent. He rarely spoke to anyone, locked himself in his room, and even let food rot on his desk. Then came a turning point that some believe changed everything. A psychology professor named Henry Murray selected Ted for a series of experiments. These weren't ordinary studies. They were harsh, stressful interrogations secretly tied to government. Projects like MK Ultra, Ted and other students were asked to write about their deepest beliefs. Then, over and over again, lawyers attacked those beliefs in brutal mock interrogations, all while electrodes tracked their stress. For 3 years, Ted endured this humiliation and was forced to re-watch his own breakdowns on video. For most students, the experience was uncomfortable. For Ted, it was devastating. Murray's team later described him as the most traumatized subject in the entire program. Some argue this was the moment that broke him. Others say the anger was always there, waiting for a spark. Either way, Ted left Harvard even more isolated than before. Despite this, he pressed on academically. He earned a PhD in mathematics at the University of Michigan, where his research was considered groundbreaking. At just 25 years old, he became the youngest professor ever hired at UC Berkeley. But while his work impressed scholars, his teaching failed to connect with students. Cold, distant, and difficult, he earned little respect in the classroom. And then, without warning, he quit. No farewell, no explanation. He simply walked away. To his family, he explained that he couldn't keep teaching engineers people who would go on to create the very technologies he had begun to despise. Ted had turned his back on academia and on society. He sought a simpler life, far removed from the modern world. But instead of peace, his retreat into the wilderness would begin his transformation from gifted scholar to America's most wanted killer. After leaving academia, Ted disappeared into the Montana wilderness. With his brother's help, he built a tiny shack, no more than a wooden box tucked among the trees. There was no electricity, no plumbing, and no modern comfort of any kind. Just a cot, a wood stove, shelves stacked with books, and jars of chemicals he gathered from junkyards. This cabin became his sanctuary and his workshop. He survived on hunting rabbits, reading, and an obsession that consumed him building bombs. By the late 1970s, his attacks began. Universities and airlines were his first targets. The FBI gave him a code name, Unabomber, short for University and Airline Bomber. The press later turned it into the name everyone would remember, the Unabomber. Each device was crafted by hand with extraordinary care. They looked more like puzzles or art pieces than weapon-smooth wooden boxes, intricate mechanisms, each one designed to maim and kill. And they carried no fingerprints, no fibers, no evidence. They were perfect machines of destruction, leaving investigators baffled. The victims seemed random: a security guard, professors, airline passengers. Some survived with severe burns, others lost limbs, and in 1985, the first death shook the nation. Hugh Scruton, a computer store owner, discovered a package left outside his shop in Sacramento. It exploded the moment he touched it, killing him instantly. He was about to get married. Every package was a mystery box of death, carefully built, terrifyingly precise, and always one step ahead of the FBI. The search for the Unabomber soon became the largest and most expensive manhunt in FBI history. For 17 years, agents combed through thousands of leads, studied every clue, and still found nothing. The bomber always seemed invisible. Then, in 1987, came a rare break. In Salt Lake City, a woman spotted a man placing a package outside a computer store. He wore a gray hoodie, sunglasses, and a mustache. A sketch was released nationwide. For the first time, the public saw the face of the phantom. But a sketch wasn't enough. No name, no address, no way to track him down. After the drawing hit the news, the bombings stopped. For 5 years, there was silence. But in the early 1990s, the silence ended. The bombs returned, deadlier than before. They tore through offices and homes, injuring and killing more victims. The FBI was lost. The randomness of the attacks made no sense. What was the motive? Why these people? The answer came not with another bomb, but with words. In 1995, the Unabomber sent a message to the world. A 56-page manuscript titled Industrial Society and Its Future. His demand was chilling. Publish the manifesto in a national newspaper, or more people would die. After heated debate, the Washington Post printed it under FBI guidance. Across the country, readers rushed to buy newspapers, desperate to read the words of the man who had haunted America for nearly 2 decades. It opened with one line: "The Industrial Revolution and its consequences have been a disaster for the human race." The manifesto raged against technology and modern life. It claimed machines had stolen human freedom, caused psychological suffering, and damaged the planet. It called for nothing less than dismantling society itself. Some readers found pieces of it strangely persuasive. Others saw it as the work of a fanatic. But within those pages were more than ideas. Hidden in its language were unique phrases and quirks of style, clues that would expose the man behind the bombs, and that man's downfall would come not from the FBI, but from his own family. When Ted's brother David read the manifesto, he felt sick. His wife Linda had already suspected something. The style of writing, the logic, it all felt too familiar. At first, David refused to believe it. Ted was eccentric, yes. Angry, yes. But a killer, impossible. The deeper he read, the harder it was to deny. The phrases, the rhythm, even the vocabulary matched the letters Ted had once written to him. David was torn apart. Did he protect his brother, or did he protect innocent lives? In the end, loyalty gave way to duty. David contacted the FBI. It wasn't DNA. It wasn't fingerprints. It wasn't surveillance. The key to catching America's smartest killer was family. In April 1996, armed with David's evidence, the FBI surrounded Ted's cabin in Montana. Inside, Ted was completely unaware, busy grinding aluminum for his next bomb. He looked thin, unkempt, covered in dust, when agents stormed the shack. They uncovered everything they needed: 40,000 pages of coded journals detailing his crimes, bomb-making supplies, disguises, and even a live bomb ready to be sent to an aerospace company in Dallas. After nearly 2 decades, the hunt was over. The Unabomber was in custody. Facing overwhelming evidence, Ted chose to plead guilty. It spared him the death penalty, but guaranteed life in prison without parole. Even behind bars, he didn't stop writing. He published books, exchanged letters with journalists and admirers, and, strangely, developed a following. Women wrote him love letters. He even found a deep connection with one, a schoolteacher he called his lady love. For a man who had spent his life struggling with isolation, prison brought more connection than freedom ever had. But his connections also included darker friendships. He struck up conversations with Timothy McVeigh, the Oklahoma City bomber who killed 168 people. Together, they shared views on government and society. Though McVeigh's path ended quickly on death row, Ted's own end came years later. In 2023, at 81 years old, suffering from cancer and weakened by time, he took his own life inside his cell. Today, Ted Kaczynski remains one of history's strangest figures. A child prodigy who became a math professor, then a recluse, and finally a killer. His manifesto still circulates, inspiring thinkers and extremists alike. Some call him a prophet for predicting the dangers of technology. But his diaries tell another story: a man consumed by hate. He admitted to killing dogs because their barking annoyed him, to fantasizing about killing women who rejected him, even neighbors who simply got on his nerves. He littered, poached, and mocked environmentalists while claiming to fight for the Earth. The truth is clear. His so-called revolution was just a mask for rage. Ted Kaczynski wanted to be remembered as a visionary. History remembers him as a murderer. His words may live on, but so do the scars he left behind. If this story moved you, share it forward. And don't forget to subscribe to the Infinitale for more untold chapters of world history.